Control is a weird, strange, and sometimes confusing game.
Fair warning, this is gonna be weirder than usual.
But it is also exciting, beautiful, and inspiring. A good half of my first playthrough, I was confused and lost. Altered world events, objects of power, paranatural beings, his, Heron, and the oldest house. Control is not shy of overwhelming the player with lore, but it does reward those who decide to stick through it to piece all the puzzle pieces together.
I can try.
Control expands on Remedy's previous work by contextualizing the events of its previous games within a larger universe. If Alan Wake is where we get a first glimpse of this world, then Control is the game that sets up the foundation of this world and its rules, and it does a great job on doing that.
Xbox One.
Remember that weird box?
TV. TV and movies. TV. Xbox. Watch TV.
Well, before Control, for a while Remedy used to develop games exclusively for Xbox. Microsoft held the publishing rights for Alan Wake, and after the release of the first game, Remedy wanted to make a sequel right away. However, Microsoft wasn't as excited about it as they wanted to develop their own IP as their new flagship system seller. Remedy was not ready to give away Alan Wake. Microsoft and Remedy made a deal to create Quantum Break. According to official statements from Remedy, Quantum Break is not part of the connected universe, so therefore, for the purpose of this series of exploration of Remedy's connected universe, I decided to skip Quantum Break in favor of Control. Quantum Break development had to deal with many compromises. Microsoft would get involved in the development process, from the TV show integration to Microsoft's management ideas and clashes with Remedy's vision. Quantum Break was fairly well reviewed, and Microsoft was happy with it. They wanted Quantum Break to be at the forefront of Xbox, similar to Gears of War and Halo, but Remedy had different plans.
You can't let this happen. You stopped it.
The origins of the name Control kind of come from Remedy taking back control of its destiny, so in some ways this is a full circle. Development of Control began shortly after the release of Quantum Break. Control was published in partnership with 505 Games. It was a very different deal than the ones that they had with Microsoft. Under this arrangement, 505 Games will have the right to publish the game, but Remedy will retain both the intellectual property and publishing rights to further titles. Remedy will also have full control of all creative decisions during the development. In February 2024, Remedy bought off all remaining publishing rights from 505 Games. I guess you could say now they are in full control of Control. Control was developed with a budget of slightly under 30 million euros, which is considered to be a fairly modest budget for a AAA game.
I'm Dr. Casper Darling.
The game had a unique marketing campaign. Remedy created an RG, alternate reality game, as a promotional strategy for Control. It was held on the official Discord server. The game revolved around a hidden encrypted code. Whoever could solve it was able to access their page and view a video related to Control. On top of that, those who solved the alternate reality game puzzle were mentioned in the final game credits. By February 2024, Control had sold over 4 million units, generating over 100 million euros in revenue.
But it's all a lie. Something to distract us from the truth. They're lying to us. We're lying to ourselves.
I love the first hour of Control. The game starts with Jessie Faden arriving at the Federal Bureau of Control. She is searching for her long missing brother, who was taken away by the Federal Bureau of Control 17 years ago. In this short sequence, Remedy established all important characters: Dr. Darling, Ahti, Director Trench, as well as Polaris.
You called me, so here I am.
In the beginning section, Jessie says,
The room's not the world. The world is much bigger and much stranger.
This felt like a direct link to Alan Wake's ending.
It's not a lake. It's an ocean.
And in Control, we finally get to see this ocean and get an understanding on what Alan was talking about. Jessie is excited to arrive at the bureau. We do get a clear impression, and it cost her a lot to get there. And she's about to get answers to all her questions that she's been trying to get for 17 years. Except for one small issue.
Hello?
The building is empty. The only living being that we get to encounter is the janitor, Ahti.
You are here about the job. Janitor's assistant.
The janitor assumes that she is here for a job interview, to fill up the janitor assistant position. What makes it weirder and stranger is that the janitor is able to hear and respond telepathically to her thoughts.
Ahti the janitor is a friendly face in my book.
Better than somebody with no face at all. Think about it. No face.
Which I guess by Jessie's reaction is not weird at all. Jessie arrives at the director's office, where she finds that body.
You want me to pick it up? The murder weapon? Really?
She talks to a strange entity. As soon as she picks the gun, she gets thrown into a trial to become the new director of Bureau. Her choices are limited: accept the job or die. Control doesn't spare time on smoothing up its entrance. It's brusque and shocking, just like its humongous titles covering the whole screen. Seriously, these titles are huge and awesome. I love Control's typography. And there is this strange, weird talking pyramid, and it presents itself as a board. Jessie passes the trial and she becomes officially the director of the Federal Bureau of Control. We get thrown right into the action. The Hiss tries to possess Jessie, but Polaris, the spiral-shaped entity that Jessie talks to, saves her from getting possessed. Overall, the beginning sequence throws a lot of information on the player. It is very fast-paced and it builds a lot of intrigue.
Come out of that Russian roulette a winner and you're it.
We are known for telling stories. This time around, we wanted the story to focus on introducing this interesting, cool world.
Remedy's game development used to begin with developing a strong character lead, Max Payne, Alan Wake, and then they will build a world around them. This time they had a different approach. They started with the world first. Control feels like it was created to establish Remedy's connected universe rules and explain us how it works. It never gives us a clear answer of what is what and why it works in a specific way, but it gives us enough to piece it together and have an understanding of it, or at least to make us feel like we do.
Is the Hiss your enemy?
Control takes place in the Oldest House. The Oldest House is a place of power. In Control's lore, places of power operate on their own rules, different from the rules of our reality. It has a deep connection with alternate dimensions, particularly with the astral plane, the strange place where the board resides. The Oldest House experiences constant shifts. The internal architecture keeps changing depending on the events and entities affecting the building at any given moment. From the outside, it appears to be a normal-looking skyscraper. However, inside it is believed to be infinite. Control is a third-person action Metroidvania-like. The Oldest House is the perfect setting for this gameplay choice. You know how in Souls-like quite often there seems not to be a clear plot, but just a messed up world, and the best that the player can is just figure out what happened before the world was so messed up? Well, Control is quite similar to that, but it still has a plot. Figuring out how the Bureau operates, what they do, and all events prior to the Hiss is arguably more fun than following Jessie's pursuit of finding her brother Dylan. Control's lore is in my opinion the best part of this game, or close to second to throwing stuff around. Another similarity to the Souls-likes are the checkpoints that remind me too much of the Souls-like fire camps. It is great that whenever Jessie clears the Hiss, the room shifts, but often it is just annoying to die too far from the action and have to run all the way back. I understand the Souls-like game's approach that they have a whole enemy reset and it's all about the challenge, but here in Control, in most cases after respawn nothing will change and you might have to run through empty hallways for a while. And you might even get lost because the Oldest House can get confusing, which could be fun in the normal circumstances, but not when you are fighting a boss and you just want to jump right back into the action. I just wish that sometimes if you die at the boss you would have respawned right in front of it instead of making us to run and repeat the whole cutscenes. What is great about the Oldest House is the exploration. There are many secrets, hidden rooms, collectibles, notes and recordings. It is a great feeling when you find out something that you haven't seen before and you get this aha moment. There is this side mission with the mirror. When we first go to the area, when we're following the main story, we can't enter through that door as Jessie doesn't have clearance yet. But when we return a few missions later on, there is actually a quite cool side mission. And it is great that if we come back we have a chance to find something new. Unfortunately, probably most players will skip it or not notice this side content. The game forces us to pay attention to the environment. There is no minimap indicated where to go. Initially coming off from Alan Wake, I found that to be annoying. I was lost in the beginning for some time until I realized that I just need to follow the signs. This feeling of paying attention to your surroundings, searching for the signs, adds greatly to the immersion. It's a great change from following a straight and narrow path in the woods in the first Alan Wake, that we now actually get to wander in more complex and exciting Oldest House, when we have the freedom to explore what's out there and we actually might find some interesting things. Control's gameplay is much better than Alan Wake. It is just a fun game to play. My main criticism will be the map. The map just doesn't make sense most of the time. It doesn't account for the floors and it feels that it's confusing on purpose. Thankfully there is plenty enough of signs and without them probably it would have been too painful to navigate in the Oldest House.
We need to get you working.
Unfortunately, there are some dull parts. After the great first hour, there are these 3 or 4 missions that happen in very mundane areas. Especially I'm talking about the maintenance sector. The whole area they need to clear the paranormal dirt, it just feels mundane and boring. I do understand the purpose of it and why we have to take part in the janitor's assistant simulator, but I just wish they would have made it in a less tedious way. It just feels way too routine, and there is also not much plot advance in these sections. Like, come on, Jessie's been searching for 17 years for her older brother. She must have some sense of urgency. Do we really have to clean everything up before that? It felt as a forceful way to postpone the story and just fill it up with filler content until actually get back to the main plot. Till around mission 6 or 7, there is just not much going on plot-wise. However, after finishing with the mundane, the oldest house opens up, and from now on, each section gets more exciting than the other. I initially expected Control's level design to be repetitive, as I knew that the game will happen inside one building, but there are some true jaw-dropping moments like the quarry or the areas we overgrown with plants and the mushroom-like hiss-possessed creatures. Just with the lighting, projections and shape-shifting moments, Remedy manages to create accents that scream at us, something special is going on. And the destruction. The environmental destruction, how everything flies, explodes and leaves a mess out of once upon a time boring office is just great. The strongest visual trait is how the game uses its lighting effects. The explosions, flying objects, bright red lights that contrast with cold and sterile office spaces. It's insanely stylish, and I love its visual style.
The exact process of how an altered item is born eludes us.
Altered items appear as ordinary objects. They have been acted upon by paranormal forces during altered world events. Alternate world events cause them to develop unique and dangerous properties. These items are infused with paranormal energies with thoughts from collective unconscious. Altered items are studied and contained by the Federal Bureau of Control in the containment sector of the oldest house. The first time Jessie touches a gun is when she first engages with an object of power.
And this gun's alive.
Jessie is a para-utilitarian, which means she has the ability to bind to herself objects of power and use the power that they grant. The first one that she gets is the service weapon, a customizable gun with never-ending bullets that throughout the game can be modified. When we acquire the weapon for the first time, the board refers to it as a sword/gun. You can collect swords and mods to expand and modify the service weapon in RPG-like fashion, but I found the implementation of these mechanics to be an afterthought. There is just too much loot that around mission 4 I was consistently getting message that my inventory is full. With everything going on in Bureau, I just didn't feel like spending time to figure out the modifications system, as frankly, I didn't really feel like I need to. The gun by itself was enough to deal with the most of the encounters. The gunshots feel punchy and gunplay overall feels impactful. It is just plain fun to shoot. You have two shooting styles to choose during a fighting sequence. Longer range pistols and closer range powerful shotgun. Most of the fighting sequences are fun and fast paced, but there are a few moments when we get overthrown with enemies that the fight starts to feel too long. The great thing about Control is that the further you explore, the more you can find about each object of power. Further on, we can find in the collectibles that the service weapon was found in 1938. The Bureau theorized that the service weapon could have previously been a weapon from folklore, could have been Excalibur or Thor's hammer, which makes sense as the weapon only serves the chosen one, just as Excalibur serves only the one who is worthy. The service weapon serves only the director. The powers granted by the objects of power are approved by the board. Whenever the power is approved, Jessie learns a new ability. The most important and the most effective one is the throw. As the game progresses, there are more objects of power to gather that open up more special powers. Dash, shield, levitation. Control could really benefit from a New Game Plus mode. It would be great to have the ability to replay the game with all these abilities unlocked from the beginning. There is enough enemy variety to keep it entertaining, but not enough to keep it fresh. To summarize, the majority of enemies are kinda the same. There are some with the shield, flying ones, and explosive ones. After some time it gets predictable how to fight them, but thankfully the game is not long enough to get bored of it. There are some tedious encounters. Worst of all were the mini-bosses, or perhaps they were bosses. I'm not sure how to classify them, as they just felt like a beefed up version of a normal enemy. They have an additional agent tag to their name. For some reason there are no exciting bosses during the main story. The exciting and weird ones are all hidden behind the side quests that are off the beaten path. There are some that stand out the most. For example, the first fight with Tomasi, he had a great entrance, but further on through the game you will see more similar like enemies that are sort of Tomasi light fights. The ones that I enjoyed the most were the big, weird, creepy creatures, especially the one from the fridge object encounter.
What this thing will do, you have to get
Get me out of here.
After getting the throwing powers, the gameplay action sequences will be mixed with a few puzzles here and there. The majority of puzzles involve picking up an energy box and throwing it to the right spot. I don't mind puzzles, but please, no more electric boxes. Every single puzzle, including the DLCs, includes one way or another a box placement. After doing it for numerous of time, it stops being fun.
What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
I definitely wanted to be a professor of mythology. That was my life. That's what I'm going to be.
This interview actually helped me to understand better the nature of the most strange entities of Remedy's universe. The His, the Darkness, the Board, Polaris. They're all beings from another dimension that can interact one way or another with our world. The Bureau classifies them as paranatural entities. Paranatural entities are known as extra-dimensional beings. They are living beings that are paranatural in nature. Some appear to be intelligent entities without a physical presence or biological bodies, while some others do possess biological bodies. Most of them have their own goals and their separate ways of affecting the normal world. The Board, for example, interacts with the world through the Director. The Director receives the weapon that the Chosen One is deemed worthy of and receives the blessing of the Board with the given powers, as long as the Director doesn't stray too far away from the Board's will. The Board is always represented as a reverse pyramid, which indicates that someone is looking from above. The His motives are unclear, they're ominous and mysterious, but the Board does feel threatened by it. It is very similar to Alan Wake's Darkness, an unseen, otherworldly, supernatural force consuming everyone in its way. Polaris is another entity that was discovered by Jessie. It stays with her in constant psychic contact and protects her from the His. The great thing about Control is how mysterious and strange these forces are. They can be viewed as just simple paranormal beings, but some of them are very pagan, godlike creatures.
I'm Ahti, the janitor, by the way. You'll work for me.
I am completely sure that Ahti, the janitor, is not human and he knows way too much to just be a usual janitor. He can access areas of the Bureau that others can't. When I was researching for this video, I found that Ahti's name is a name of a Finnish sea god, and it doesn't seem like a coincidence.
It's not a lake. It's an ocean.
Järveks luulin merta kerran, runon lausui hän.
If Ahti, the sea god, is a janitor, then it means his job is to keep the ocean of paranormal entities inside of the ocean without spilling them into our world. It means that the Director's job is to help Ahtis to protect the normal world from the ocean of paranormal entities that are ready to get out of it at any time. That's why Ahti, who's been mentioning his vacation during the game, can go on a break only after he finally gets his janitor's assistant. Basically, the Director is the janitor's assistant. And as another proof of this theory, he gives Jessie a cassette player with old gods of Asgard, the metal band we encounter in Alan Wake. Details like that is what makes Control's lore so interesting.
I can't tell you how happy I am to talk to somebody sane.
The feeling's mutual.
The least exciting aspect of Control were the Bureau's agents. We get to meet Pope, Marshall, and what was this other guy named? Simon? And to be fair, all the interactions with them were barely memorable. The cast scenes with them were very straightforward, I guess. Two static characters looking at each other and talking. The facial animation was okay, but the whole blocking of the scene is pretty mediocre. It's just two characters flat, not moving, talking, that's it. It's not like they show any kind of personality or we learn any interesting backstory to actually start to care about them.
Hey, did I mention that he was tearing his clothes off?
I won't be here when it happens.
Remedy did a great job with the characters that matter. Trench, Darling, and Ahti. Jessie never has direct contact with the first two. All the communication with Trench she receives through the hotline. And Trench does has a stylish way to talk.
I can hear the hotline ringing in my dreams, constantly ringing.
It looks very impressive for the first few times, all the dissolves and how he sounds exhausted and he expresses his views of the Bureau. It's great to see that, but after the first 3 messages I got the idea that it will be the same. It's just a voiceover with the repetition of the same 3-4 shots, which is okay, but it will be nice to have some more variety.
I'm Dr. Casper Darling, head of research.
And Darling was the most interesting of all. Since the first interaction in the beginning of the game, I wanted to find him. He seemed to be the only character in the game that knew all the answers, and all his scenes were actually great. The actor did a great job, and to my surprise I only found out later that Darling's actor is the voiceover of Alan Wake. The further you go into Control, the more you learn about Dr. Darling, and the more you get to uncover the events behind the His attack.
So many dead.
I love how Darling changes from a confident scientist introducing us to the Bureau, but the deeper we go in, the more crazy he looks. It is the best written character in the entire game, and just for one reason, he is the only character that throughout the whole game changes.
What do you know about Dylan Faden?
The main plot revolves around finding Dylan. If we follow just the cutscenes, it can feel cold and anticlimactic, but if we take time to go through the lore, read the collectibles, engage with the recordings, it gets much more interesting. For example, here is what happened in an Altered World event in Ordinary. 17 years ago, Jesse and Dylan found a projector which projected slides that opened doors to the other dimensions. Their meddling caused the disappearance of all adult population of Ordinary, Jesse's and Dylan's hometown. The disappearance of Ordinary prompted the Bureau to intervene, confiscate the projector, and bring in the kids to the Bureau. Finding the information and exploring what the Bureau did through their logs and recordings is what makes it a good story. The meeting with Dylan without this context and knowledge of these previous events doesn't have the same impact. Regardless of that meeting severely lacked Jesse's emotional response, or any emotional response whatsoever. If there was a moment to make a great emotional scene, that was it, but instead it felt plainly like, okay, long time no seen, more problems to deal with, peace.
Okay, Dylan. I'll go.
It just would have been great to have a bit more of emotional impact in these scenes, especially considering that Jess and her brother have been separated for 17 years, and this meeting came with a prize. At least some sort of climactic moment in the end of the game could have gone a long way, but nope, Control stays cold till the end.
The truth is harsh, but these people seem familiar with death.
And regards Jessie, I have very mixed feelings. On one hand, considering the circumstance she's in, you would expect her to react, I don't know, afraid, confused, but most of her reactions were calm.
You know what? I'm happy to be here.
Maybe even too calm. On my first playthrough I found it strange. It makes the protagonist to feel disassociated from the player who's experienced this impressive and disturbing world for the first time.
I'm the director of the Federal Bureau of Control. We're in this together.
In the end, this is supposed to be the big and shocking revelation moment when Jessie accepts who she is. My only reaction was like, yeah, we knew it before.
Well, duh.
She's been acting as a director for a while. There is a concept in writing that the hero's journey requires the character to change. In Jessie's case, I felt that she was the same person that she was since the arrival to the Bureau. We never get to see her emotional reaction to this change.
They call me the director. But that's not me. I'm not a director type, not a leader.
To be fair, Jessie doesn't admit that she's a director for a while, but I've never seen any struggle in accepting her role through the game more than just a few lines of denial. From the beginning, and all her interactions with the agents, stepping into the director's role seems easy and effortless. There are clues in the beginning and in the lore of the game why it's so effortless the transition. Her life in Ordinary has been ruined by the extraordinary Altered World events, but here in the Bureau, the extraordinary is the ordinary. She is finally in control, and as great as it sounds, this is probably the only case in Control that I wish they would have shown us more, instead of telling us about all events in the collectibles.
We can do that again.
I won't let them win.
When I started playing Control, I was expecting to get a better understanding of Remedy's connected universe. I was hoping to find clues about what happened with Alan Wake. The first proof was finding this recording of Poets of the Fall. It was great and smooth link between both games. If you're not aware, Poets of the Fall were featured in Alan Wake 1 as themselves.
You mentioned a poem last time we talked, by Thomas Zane?
In the later half of the game, I found a collectible about Zane. It was nice to see the connection between both games, and it made Control so much more exciting.
That begins by understanding what's real and what's imagined.
Do we know each other? This feels familiar. I can't seem to... I've forgotten it. I'm sorry. My name is Alan Wake.
My reaction was, let's go! And I was very glad at this moment that I followed the recommendation to play the games in order, but I didn't like the expansion. Even though it was great to see Alan again, the whole purpose of this expansion was to announce Alan Wake 2. It is a cool way to announce the game, but when you already know that the game is out there, it just doesn't hit the same.
Hey friend, I have flare gun. Oh, Christmas lights. You can run from around.
It is fun to use the light and see darkness once again, but the antagonist, that's where I got the most problem. The antagonist of the expansion is Dr. Hartman. It was interesting to learn how he became a monster, but the fight with him is just not fun. It is tedious, and worst of all, we need to repeat the same fight multiple times, and there are more electric boxes, which I was already sick of them while playing them in game. Please, no more boxes. I had a better experience with Foundation DLC. Foundation DLC expands Control's lore. We get to learn more about Bureau's origins, more about the board, meet the former, and the discovery of the oldest house. In general, it was a more interesting experience as Jesse gets to acquire 2 new objects of power and observe the board's reaction to that. But the final enemy was Marshall and kind of lacked any emotional impact whatsoever. Jesse does seem to care about fighting with her, but to be fair, I wouldn't care about fighting her or any other secondary character as we never got enough screen time with them to feel any kind of affection. The color palette is very red dominant. The whole DLC happens between 2 types of location, the blended with reality astral plane and the reddish caves. It doesn't look bad, but I do prefer the aesthetics of the main game more than the red caves of the Foundation and the blend with the astral plane. Control is a cold, mysterious and strange game that I started to appreciate more on my second playthrough. It has its flaws, it doesn't hit you emotionally in the sense that you fall in love with the characters or care about what happens to them, but there is enough of intrigue that makes you want to discover Remedy's connected universe.
I want to be a part of this world.
It does an amazing job of establishing the rules of this connected universe. When I was playing Alan Wake 1, at the end, I had more questions than answers, and I had no direction on how to make any sense of them other than my own assumptions. Control gave me the direction. It doesn't spoon-feed you the answer, but it gives you enough not to feel lost. It can get tedious at times, it does lose its focus, but it left me with a strong enough impression that I wanted to start a second playthrough. It is a huge jump quality-wise as a game. The gameplay is great, it's fun to play, it's fun to explore and to fight the enemies. Remedy's embraced their weird and creative level design. If Alan Wake I played for the story, then Control I played for the gameplay and lore. The oldest house will stay in my memory as the greatest building I've got to explore in video games. And I can't wait to start playing Alan Wake 2. Just as I was excited to see how Control expands Alan Wake's story, now I want to see how the older house and Bureau will be related to Alan Wake's sequel. And if you're still thinking if you should try to play Control or not, then it's worth it to just play for this maze that might be one of the best action sequences in gaming ever made.
Take control.
That was awesome.